you ever found yourself trapped by emotions that don't seem to belong to you? Overwhelmed by someone else's anger, weakened by their criticism, or wounded by their rejection? Have you ever secretly wished you could simply stop feeling pain inflicted by others, that you could rise above their words, actions, or judgments, untouched and unshaken? We live in a world that praises strength as something physical, external, loud, often aggressive. Society tells us strength is about how much we can withstand or overpower. But what if the real power, the true and hidden source of strength, is something invisible yet infinitely more potent? Something subtle yet revolutionary? This power exists, and it's called emotional immunity. Emotional immunity isn't numbness or denial. It's not apathy or shutting down feelings. Rather, it is a rare form of psychological mastery, the art of choosing how and when your emotional self is affected by the world around you. It's the profound realization that external events don't inherently hold power over your internal state. They only do when you give them permission. Imagine, for a moment, a life where insults bounce off you harmlessly, where rejection no longer cripples your confidence, where manipulation attempts simply dissolve, powerless against your emotional boundaries. Imagine feeling entirely secure, not because the world around you changed, but because you did. This isn't fantasy, it's achievable. Emotional immunity is your hidden power, quietly waiting within. It's the silent secret of true strength, a form of power most people overlook because they never see it outwardly. Yet, it's precisely this invisible shield of emotional mastery that makes you truly unbreakable. But to embrace this hidden power, you must first recognize the silent battle happening within your own emotional landscape. A battle many people never realize they're fighting. Are you ready to unlock your hidden emotional power? Let's explore deeper. You've always been taught that strength means being tough, unbreakable, and unyielding. Society glorifies external dominance, muscular bodies, financial success, assertive voices, commanding presence. But this image is incomplete, even dangerously misleading. The true battleground of strength isn't in the visible realm. It isn't about how loudly you speak, how much power you wield over others, or even how much respect you command outwardly. The real war is internal, a silent, hidden fight waged within the depths of your emotional landscape. Think about the last time someone criticized you publicly. Maybe it was a sarcastic jab from a friend, a cutting remark from a partner, or a harsh evaluation from a superior. On the surface, you might have maintained composure, but inside, the damage was immediate and brutal. You felt anger bubbling, shame rising, insecurity whispering cruel accusations in your ear. You replayed the comment endlessly, internalizing it until you became your own tormentor. Why did this happen? Because your emotional reactions were controlled externally, dictated by someone else's words, mood, or actions. This dependency is the ultimate weakness, allowing another person's state to govern your internal peace. The paradox is painful and true. The less emotional control you possess, the more power the outside world has over you. But let's go deeper. It isn't just about obvious emotional wounds. Consider the subtler damage, the gradual, persistent erosion of your self-esteem, your inner certainty. Every time you silently accept disrespect, suppress your feelings to avoid conflict, or allow others to impose their emotional states onto you, a piece of your inner strength quietly dissolves, and this silent erosion leaves scars deeper and more lasting than visible bruises ever could. It weakens your psychological foundation, leaving you vulnerable, reactive, and easily manipulated. Over time, you may find yourself desperately seeking validation, fearing confrontation, or compromising your boundaries simply because emotional independence seems impossible. You think you're strong, resilient even. But then it happens again. A careless remark pierces your armor. A subtle manipulation leaves you drained. A betrayal you didn't see coming crashes over you like an emotional tsunami. It's not just pain, it's exhaustion. A constant aching fatigue that weighs on your shoulders, dragging you down day after day. You find yourself reacting impulsively, getting tangled in endless arguments, constantly defending yourself against imagined threats. Every criticism wounds you. Every conflict feels personal. Why does this happen? Because without emotional immunity, your inner world isn't controlled by you. It's controlled by others. They tug your strings without effort. Friends, partners, co-workers, even strangers on social media, they all have access to your emotional core. Your mood swings unpredictably, your focus breaks easily, and self-doubt creeps in quietly, sabotaging your potential. Consider relationships. Without emotional immunity, love can feel like warfare. Every small disagreement becomes a battlefield. Every rejection feels catastrophic. You cling to others desperately, hoping their approval might fill the void inside, but it never does. Instead, you become vulnerable to manipulation, exploitation, and emotional blackmail. You tolerate disrespect because confrontation is unbearable. You compromise your dignity because emotional abandonment seems even worse. At work, this vulnerability translates into constant anxiety. Criticism from your boss ruins your week. A co-worker's negative comment derails your confidence for days. Every professional setback doesn't just hurt, it paralyzes you. You avoid opportunities, fearing judgment, rejection, or failure, keeping yourself stuck in comfort zones that slowly become prisons. And then there's the psychological toll: stress, anxiety, depression. The less emotionally immune you are, the more your mind becomes a battleground. You live in a constant state of alertness, hyper-aware of potential threats, real or imagined. This continuous vigilance drains your energy, making even simple tasks exhausting. Eventually, your mental health suffers, affecting your physical health, sleep, and overall quality of life. But perhaps worst of all is how this vulnerability shapes your identity. You begin believing you're inherently weak, overly sensitive, or incapable. This self-perception becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, trapping you in a cycle of emotional fragility. You lose trust in yourself, in your judgment, in your worth. Slowly, your sense of self fades, replaced by whatever external validation you manage to grasp temporarily. This is the true cost of emotional vulnerability. It robs you of your freedom, your peace, your dignity, and ultimately, your power. But it doesn't have to be this way. There's a different path, one you've never truly explored, a path toward genuine emotional sovereignty, a path toward emotional immunity. This is the moment your perception shifts entirely, when you begin to grasp the profound, hidden power that has always been within your reach. Emotional immunity is not about suppressing your feelings, becoming cold, or numbing your heart. It's something far deeper and infinitely more powerful. Picture yourself in a storm. The wind howls around you, the rain lashes at your face, and yet, deep inside, there's a place untouched by chaos, calm, controlled, untouchable. This is emotional immunity. It's not about being unaffected by the storm. It's about choosing which storms deserve your energy, attention, and response. You begin to understand a critical truth most never discover. Emotional reactions are not mandatory. They are choices. Emotions are simply data, signals about what's happening inside and around you. Emotional immunity means you've mastered how to interpret and respond to this data. Instead of being pulled into turmoil by every provocation, manipulation, or crisis, you stand in a position of power, watching emotions flow by like a river, selecting carefully what deserves to enter your inner fortress. When someone criticizes you, manipulates you, or tries to hurt you, you no longer instantly react. You pause, feeling the power of that small space between stimulus and response. In that tiny moment, you realize you're free, no longer enslaved by automatic reactions. Your responses are now deliberate, precise, and controlled. You've broken the invisible chains that once made you vulnerable to everyone else's emotional states. This realization is exhilarating and profound. like waking up from a long nightmare and realizing you're finally safe. Your heart is no longer open terrain for manipulation or emotional exploitation. Instead, you choose strength, balance, and clarity. You finally understand that emotional immunity isn't about never feeling. It's about feeling exactly what you choose to feel. It's the mastery of choice, the sovereignty over your internal world, the freedom to walk through life unafraid of emotional assault because you possess the ultimate shield, your conscious decision. As this truth settles into your soul, you feel a quiet certainty emerging, replacing fear and anxiety with unwavering confidence. You've just discovered the most powerful secret of human psychology. You are immune, not because you stopped caring, but because now you alone decide what's worthy of your emotional investment. Now imagine something completely different, something almost unthinkable. Imagine that rejection doesn't crush you anymore. Imagine criticism passing through you, harmless as wind through open fingers. Imagine manipulative words losing their poison, unable to penetrate your carefully constructed fortress of emotional clarity. This is not a fantasy. It's the reality that comes with emotional mastery. When you finally develop true emotional immunity, everything begins to shift. You no longer react impulsively to every provocation or subtle manipulation. You find yourself able to pause in critical moments, choosing your responses intentionally rather than being tossed helplessly by the currents of others' moods and opinions. It begins quietly. At first, you barely notice the change. Someone's harsh words brush past you, and instead of the usual sting, you feel strangely unaffected. Situations that once triggered frustration or anger suddenly seem trivial, almost irrelevant. Emotional mastery doesn't numb you, it elevates you. It places you above the petty dramas and emotional traps that ensnare others, allowing you to see clearly and act decisively. Your relationships begin to transform profoundly. People notice that they can no longer easily control you through guilt, fear, or sympathy. Some may find this unsettling. Your newfound emotional independence challenges their familiar patterns. But those who genuinely respect you will admire your strength, drawn to the calm resilience that now defines you. Even your inner dialogue changes. Where doubt once whispered incessantly, a newfound confidence speaks clearly, firmly reminding you of your self-worth. Anxiety and insecurity fade into echoes, replaced by an empowering sense of internal stability. You begin to understand deeply that other people's emotions are theirs to handle, not yours to carry. Emotional mastery liberates you. It releases you from the constant drain of pleasing others, from the endless cycle of emotional exhaustion. It offers you something rare, something that few truly achieve: complete sovereignty over your inner world. This liberation is the gateway to authentic peace, not because everything around you suddenly changes, but because your internal landscape is no longer hostage to the external chaos. This is what emotional immunity feels like. It feels like freedom, quiet power, and effortless strength. Here's the moment of truth, the turning point. Most people live their lives as emotional puppets, tugged around by other people's words, glances, silence, or approval. A passive storm of reactions. Someone disrespects them, and they collapse. Inside, someone praises them, and suddenly they feel whole again. But what does that mean? It means they have no power, because their emotions, the most sacred part of their internal world, don't belong to them. They've outsourced them to the world, to strangers, to enemies, to ghosts from the past. That's not strength. That's slavery. Now here's the revelation. Emotional immunity is the highest form of power, not because it makes you cold, but because it makes you sovereign. When you develop emotional immunity, something fundamental shifts. You stop being the hunted. You stop being predictable. You stop being programmable. The insults don't land the same way. The rejections don't cut as deep. The guilt trips, the manipulation, the fake affection, none of it sticks. Why? Because you've learned the ultimate rule of emotional mastery. You are the gatekeeper. You decide what enters, what touches you, what gets your energy. That's what terrifies people the most. Someone who is unreactive, not because they don't feel, but because they've trained themselves to feel selectively. Selective emotional engagement is not apathy, it's precision. You don't respond to noise, you respond to truth. You don't chase connection, you evaluate it. You don't collapse under pressure, you observe it like weather, passing, uncontrollable, meaningless unless you choose to walk in the rain. And here's the most dangerous part. For them, not you. Once you develop emotional immunity, you become unreadable. Once you're unreadable, you're uncontrollable. And once you're uncontrollable, you become powerful in a way that frightens weak people. Because they can't use what doesn't move you. They can't weaponize guilt, approval, shame, affection, or fear. You've disarmed their entire psychological arsenal. And in that moment, when you no longer react like everyone else, you no longer belong to everyone else. You belong to yourself. This is the real strength no one teaches. The strength that doesn't roar, but radiates. The kind that doesn't dominate others, but dissolves their influence over you. This is emotional immunity, not the absence of feeling, but the triumph of sovereignty. Are you beginning to see it? Then you're not just learning. You're remembering who you were before the world told you how to feel. Most people believe emotional strength comes naturally with age or experience. It doesn't. It's a discipline, a skill, a weapon you forge in silence by repeatedly choosing control over chaos, silence over reaction, clarity over confusion. This is how you build emotional immunity. Awareness. You must see the hooks. Before they pierce you, every emotional manipulation begins with a hook. It could be a passive-aggressive comment, a silent treatment, a sudden shift in someone's tone. The average person reacts. They flinch. They internalize. They bleed. But not you. Not anymore. The first step to emotional immunity is training. Your awareness like a radar, noticing the moment your heartbeat spikes, your chest tightens, your mind races, because that's the moment you are being hijacked. Ask yourself, whose emotion is this? Is this reaction mine, or was it planted? Once you become aware of the emotional bait, you buy yourself something rare, time, and time equals power. Emotional distance. Break the automatic reaction. Loop. You are not your first emotion. You are not your fear, your rage, or your sadness. You are the space behind it, the observer. To build emotional immunity, you must practice the art of internal distance. That means breathing instead of reacting, pausing instead of speaking, observing instead of assuming. It's not weakness to step back, it's dominance. Because the moment you stop reacting like a puppet, people lose control over you. Psychological reframing. Redefine the attack. Your mind is a battlefield, but the bullets are usually illusions. When someone criticizes you, insults you, rejects you, what do you tell yourself about it? That you're not enough? That they must be right? That you're unsafe? This is where emotional immunity is won or lost. You must seize control of the story you tell yourself. Reframe instantly. This rejection is redirection. Their silence is not my guilt. This conflict is information, not identity. The stronger your frame, the less you suffer. Deliberate exposure. Train in discomfort. Just like physical immunity strengthens by facing bacteria, emotional immunity grows by facing pain. That doesn't mean throwing yourself into chaos. It means strategically exposing yourself to controlled conflict, saying no, setting boundaries, controlled failure, risking embarrassment, speaking the uncomfortable truth, controlled rejection, being ignored, misunderstood, or criticized. Each time you stay grounded instead of panicking, you evolve. Discomfort becomes your gym, and immunity becomes your muscle. Non-attachment, care without collapse. You don't have to become cold to become strong. You don't have to stop caring. You just have to stop collapsing. Emotional immunity means this. You feel everything, but you are owned by nothing. People will still disappoint you. Life will still hurt, but you will carry it differently. You will hold the pain without becoming it. That's what makes you dangerous. You're no longer afraid of emotion. You've made peace with the storm because now you are the storm. So what happens when you build emotional immunity? You become unreachable. Not in the cold, arrogant sense the world might assume, but in the way that truly threatens those who seek to control you. You no longer react the way they expect. You don't collapse under pressure. You don't chase validation. You don't defend yourself against insults. You don't break when love is withheld. Because the emotional hooks they once used to control you, shame, guilt, rejection, attention, don't sink in anymore. They bounce off you like bullets against armor that took years to forge. This is where you become a different kind of human, the person who walks away from chaos, not because they're numb, but because they're free. The one who listens without absorbing, who feels without drowning, who loves without becoming a slave to that love. You no longer beg for peace. You carry it, and people notice. Your silence disturbs them more than your screams ever did. Your lack of reaction becomes the loudest thing in the room. Your self-possession, your emotional immunity, radiates something few can describe, but everyone can feel: power. Real power. Not the kind that dominates others, the kind that no one can take from you. Because now, you are the storm in the stillness. You are the calm in the chaos. You are what they could never become. Someone who doesn't need the world to behave in order to be at peace. You are no longer trying to survive emotions. You're wielding them. So when they try to get to you, they'll realize something terrifying. The old version of you no longer exists, and the new one, unstoppable.